We'll be announcing a new statistician sometime over the next 3-4 days. We had no confidence. I mean, the numbers were ridiculous. Just before the election, this woman came out with these phenomenal numbers on Biden's economy. Phenomenal numbers. And then right after the election, they announced that those numbers were wrong. And that's what they did the other day. So it's a scam, in my opinion.
Donald Trump is calling it one of the biggest statistical scams in modern American history, and he just fired the woman behind it. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Jackie DeAngelis. Joining me are my co-hosts, Jonathan Hoenig, Lauren Simonetti, David Asman, and with us the entire hour, Making Money host, Charles Payne. Great to see everybody. All right, so the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics is out after a series of revisions that slashed over 1 million jobs after the fact. Trump says she's juiced the numbers before the election to help Joe Biden, then quietly corrected them after the votes were cast. So it's time to clean house.
When the data are unreliable, when they keep being revised all over the place, then there are going to be people that wonder if there's a partisan pattern in the data.
Of course, the left is melting down, demanding investigations, but there's a simple equation here, people. Incompetence equals dismissal. If you're bad at your job, you get fired. It might be a foreign concept in Washington, but not on Main Street. Looking past the noise, the Trump economy is still making huge gains. You can see the markets are up pretty big today after we dropped a little bit on Friday. Partially because of the labor number, but also because of the tariff news that was coming out, the implementation of the deadlines. Charles, I want to ask you, though, about the data, because Trump makes a good point in these revisions. But at the same time, if you really look at how it's calculated, the surveys trickle in, you could argue that that's just the way the system works. Maybe we need to kind of retool the whole thing.
Well, we do need to retool the whole thing, and that's part of it. I mean, it's not new that we need to retool the whole thing. I did so many shows on this in the last year, especially, like, you know, Jay Powell knows we need to retool this. It's been asked to him directly. So I think that's the problem, that it's been allowed to fester, allowed to get worse. You know, you go back to the 1960s, for the most part, almost every time the jobs report was ratcheted higher, right? Something unusual has happened now. Some people point to COVID, but it's deeper than that, right? And why not fix it? I mean, we're in an age, we know how many people took a plane in this country yesterday, right? We know so many things in real time that's happening. Why do we need something that we don't really have a clear-cut idea if it's right? And for 90 days, when we're talking about policy that affects every single American, isn't that the phrase Jay Powell uses at the end of everything? We know our decisions affect all Americans. You're crushing them. You're crushing them. And why are you relying on such an antiquated system?
Yeah. Well, we've been doing it for years and years and years, not just in BLS, but in so many other places. Trump's been trying to revamp it, and he's having pretty good success. So, you know, he's also taking a look at this. But, David, I was talking to Brian Jacobson, Annex Wealth Management chief economist, and I was asking him about the Fed, saying the data aside, the jobs data aside, was there anything that the Fed was looking at, because they see more than we do, that was indicating a slowing of growth? And he said there were two things that they could have looked at. He said externally, the ADP private sector payrolls report showed a little bit of a slowing growth, and internally, their own data, industrial production data, manufacturing data, it was showing a slight decline, yet still Powell sat on his hands.
Well, you're giving more ammunition to the president for firing Powell. I personally, I'm against firing Powell, but he clearly saw signs that the economy was slowing. I mean, they have so many data points that they refer to. Charles knows this very well, that they get a lot of information that we only get after the fact. So Powell clearly knew there was a slowdown that was going to show up in the jobs report, and he stubbornly refused to lower rates, which everybody is saying that. And of course, you had the resignation of this one governor right after he announced that the BLS lady was going to be fired. So the point is, there is change coming. The question is if it comes in time. But just to be clear, to be absolutely clear, because Democrats are going on about this, there is no law or regulation preventing the president from firing the head of the BLS. No law. It is a part of the Constitution. It is a part of Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, which I can read to you, Jonathan, if you don't agree. And I know the importance of an independence Fed. It's very important. But you look at these job report figures that Charles was talking about. 24 of the past 30 months were revised with revisions of 1,854,000 jobs. 24 of the past 30. That's a horrible record. If you have a person who's managing a department that the president has control over in terms of appointing the person who's heading it, is doing a terrible job, the president has every bit of a right to fire that person. So that has to be clear.
And they have a huge, David, to your point, big monthly revisions. On average, since 2002, about 50,000 jobs revised upwards or downwards. A lot of that has to do with the format and the way in which the figures come in. They kind of trickle in. They don't just take one shot in time. What worries me, David, isn't even whether it's legal or not, but how does it look? How does it look to the markets writ large?
Not bad today.
How does it look?
Well, not today, not bad.
It looks like someone's not doing their job and the president's doing something about it.
The notion of an independent Fed and an independent head of the BLS. You know, the BLS number is considered to be gold standard worldwide. So the notion that the executive branch...
But it's not gold standard.
Would be because it changes?
Because
the data trick is in and they revise the...
Because it's gotten so bad in forecasting.
And they get it so wrong. So maybe we should look at a way that we could get a more accurate reading right on the spot.
Would the president have made this decision if the number had beaten expectations? That's my question. Would he still want to make these changes, or is this more have to do with the fact that it was much lower than had been expected?
But instead of firing her, should he have changed the way they calculate and get the data? Because the BLS notes the margin of error.
To do that.
There's a margin of error.
He doesn't know what the answer is.
Of 100,000 jobs every single month. So that's 73,000 could have been 173,000 or negative 27,000.
It's never been this bad. These 2-month totals, except for 1 month in COVID, you got to go back to the 60s. This is not. Do you let it fester? I mean,
no, you address it.
We have policy that's based on this. And by the way, the notion that Powell's doesn't know. Remember, we had two dissenters on Wednesday. 2 dissenters.
Yes.
How did they know?
Governors, by the way.
July 17th, Chris Waller gives a speech, July 17th, and he says, I've got 3 reasons why we should cut rates. Number 1, tariffs are a one-off. They don't cause inflation. Number 2, the policies should be neutral, not restrictive. It's hurting the America. And number 3, my final reason for a cut now is that while the labor market looks fine on the surface, once we account for expected data revisions, we're going to know we're in trouble, that we've got a labor crisis. How did he know it and Powell didn't know it?
It's a good question. Can we take a look at the Trump economy by the numbers, though, and just see where we stand right now? Because if you take a look at this, it gives Powell a case to cut. He had it before the labor numbers came out. Inflation, 2.7%. Wages have been up 3.9%. The GDP number of 3% looked really strong, but as Larry pointed out on this show, core GDP was indicating that there's some weakness there. Unemployment rate of 4.2%. Manufacturing output is only 1.8%. And the tariff revenue, which the team is celebrating, is $150 billion. But there are so many holes to fill in the bucket.
I'm going to let you get one thing. So we look at 2 things that are very important. GDP, the real GDP number, right? Final demand, domestic, and the jobs number. From the very first rate cut, they have trended lower, which is what the Fed wants. Restrictive economy to hurt the economy, tamp it down. In the 2 key areas, it's worked. Each month, job growth has slowed. For the most part, it obviously goes like this, but the trend has been lower. Same thing. We've got the 1.1, 1.2%. I mean, that's your real GDP number. We don't want it to go any lower than that. So it's ironic that Powell could actually take a victory lap. Instead, I think this has become personal.
And that gets to the point that is the bugaboo for me of all of these various economists that are working at the Fed. They believe in the Phillips curve. They believe that, strong growth is a bad thing because it creates more inflation. That was disproved by Reagan. That was disproved by Trump during his first term. And it's not true. In defense of what you said, I used to cover Latin America. I saw a lot of bad third world economies in which the central banks were taken over by politicians. So I understand how that can be. But it is very important when you have a track record like this woman has had that you straighten things out. You have to straighten it out. And frankly, it starts at the top. She's a Biden appointee. She was, of course, approved by the Senate. The next one will also have to be approved by the
J.D.
Senate.
Vance as well,
right.
and Marco Rubio as well, voted for her. So she was voted in by a bipartisan majority.
But you have to straighten this thing out, or we do lose our credit rating as the gold standard for central banks.
And I just want to point out what I was saying before is that the system is broken. This trickling in, Jonathan, it could be, I'm not saying it is, but you could argue that it could be manipulated and people rely on that trickling in to be able to hold off on reporting the real results. It is possible that that is happening. He's not totally, out of his mind for thinking that it's a possibility.
No, but if you listen to what the commissioner actually, what I understand is the commissioner, him or herself, does not set the rate. They don't even see the data. They change some of the text, but they don't set the rate. That's
okay,
done
but
by
their
staff.
team, the buck stops with them.
Listen, and one of the theories to what you were saying is that when these surveys go out now, people who are doing well reply, okay, we're doing pretty good, let me fill out the survey. Those who aren't, wait. And those who aren't maybe never fill out the data. And we've seen that the surveys, the JOLTS is really, I don't even know why we use the JOLTS anymore. Not only is it 2 months behind, but no one fills it out at all. But so that's how you get a better number and maybe the downward revisions. So again, if someone is in the thick of this and they keep hiding behind, we're the gold standard instead of fixing it, that's a problem. I don't care how many people say it's the gold standard. This is the age of AI. This is the age of AI. We can do better. And the president has a right to say, I don't like the job this person's doing. Let's bring in someone else. That's why we elect presidents. Elections have consequences. Obama said that.
Yeah, I agree. All right.